did, depending on what you believe he did. Is it legal? For that, we turn to Tom Dupree, co-partner in charge of the D.C. office of Gibson, Dunn, and Crutcher, also studies these things in constitutional law. All right, I get that people are conflating, perhaps, or I should say, are people conflating a routine meeting about nuclear launch protocol and extending it to that became a coup without the evidence in the middle?
Well, Leland, I'm not sure anything about this whole episode is routine. It's a fairly extraordinary situation. And what General Milley basically did was, whether rightly or wrongly, he upset the chain of command. The Constitution vests the power of the commander-in-chief in the president.
I get that, but hold on. I just want to ask you, even if you take their reporting at face value, where is it that he ever told the National Command Authority ignore a lawful order from the president, which would be usurping the chain of command? I just don't see it. Maybe you do.
No, I don't know if I see that either. I think possibly the closest he came, based on the reporting we've seen, is when he convened various other military officials and said, don't do anything without consulting me. That's the closest that we've seen in the reporting that he would come to a statement along those lines.
So I guess the question is everything that you have said about this is, against the Constitution predicated on if these things that we don't have reporting on happened?
That's right. In other words, if the story, as we have heard, the initial reporting is true, there definitely seems to have been a shift, so to speak, in the chain of command. Milley reports to the president, and if he disagrees with the president, he can refuse to execute what he believes to be an unlawful order. He can invoke, as you discussed with the earlier guests, the 25th Amendment. There are a number of different things he can do. Whether or not history judges this to have been the right thing or the wrong thing may be different than what the legal judgment would be, but the legal judgment is fairly straightforward, that the president is the commander-in-chief and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff reports up to him.
Yeah, nobody's questioning that. I guess the question is that if you were defending Milley, I'll flip this around on you, couldn't you argue pretty easily that he never went outside the chain? He simply argued and told his subordinates to follow the procedure?
That's right. With regard to the meeting with his military colleagues, I think that's exactly what you would argue, that he was simply reminding them of their obligation to follow the law, and who could disagree with that? With regard to the communications with the Chinese military, that's a little more difficult. I think there, if I were defending Milley, I think the argument you would have to make is that this was a typical call that the chairman would make with leaders of foreign nations, military colleagues, and other nations, simply to assuage them, to calm them down, to say, we know what you're seeing on American television. Don't worry. Don't overread the situation. Stay calm. So
I only got 15 seconds, but I guess it all depends on what exact words were used with that Chinese general, right? Because doing the things you just described, perfectly okay. Saying, I'll give you a heads up if we're going to attack, if I'm ordered by the president to attack, not okay.
I think that's right. It depends on the words. And I would also say, Leland, that it depends on whether he consulted with his colleagues before he made that call.
All right. Tom, great analysis as always. Thank you.
Thank you, Leland.